Have you ever watched someone drift out of your life and felt an ache you couldn't quite explain? Not just sadness, something deeper, a heaviness that settled in your chest, a quiet emptiness that followed you through ordinary moments, like going into the grocery store or in the middle of a conversation, maybe into the silence before sleep. It could have been a partner you loved deeply, a dear friend, or a family member whose presence mattered more than words can say. Someone who held a place in your heart, and then something changed. The calls, they became less frequent. The warmth faded and distance grew. And no matter how many times you replayed it, part of you couldn't seem to let it go. Most people assume relationship pain is about losing someone, and sometimes it is. But sometimes the loss brushes against a place that was already tender. That's why certain endings seem larger than the moment itself. Why one conversation can echo for years. And why some goodbyes leave a mark long after the relationship is over. I know this because I lived it myself. I remember sitting on my bed after a friendship ended. The house was quiet. There wasn't anything left to say. I kept asking myself the same question. Why does this hurt so much? The relationship, it was over. I understood that. But what I couldn't understand was why it felt like something inside me had been torn open. My chest ached. There was a lump in my throat that wouldn't go away. And the more I sat with it, the more I began to realize something. I wasn't only grieving that friendship. I was touching old places inside myself that had been hurting for years. Moments I hadn't felt important. Times I had ignored what I was feeling. Relationships where I had accepted less than what my heart needed. The friendship hadn't created those feelings. It had simply brought them to the surface. And as I sat there, something else began to clear. For most of my life, keeping the peace felt safer than speaking honestly. I just learned how to adapt, how to let things go, and convince myself I was fine when something inside me wasn't. But this time was different. I told my friend that when she canceled our morning walks, more often than not, it hurt. Not in a harsh or angry way, just honestly. And the relationship didn't survive it. She never called again. And here's what I want to be honest with you about. What I was most afraid of happening happened. For a long time, that silence felt like proof. Proof that speaking up was a mistake and that staying quiet would have been easier. But over time, I began to see something differently. Her leaving didn't mean I was wrong, to be honest. It meant that the friendship couldn't hold honesty. And a connection that depends on your silence, it isn't really safety, it's comfort. And those things aren't the same. Because sometimes the deepest grief isn't losing another person. Sometimes it's mourning all the years we spent leaving ourselves behind. And that realization changed the way I understand relationship pain. I'm Jeanne Lovespots, and today we're beginning a 4-week video series called Why relationships hurt. The reason patterns repeat. And before we go any further, I want you to know this isn't about blame, not theirs or yours. Most of us have simply never had the chance to see what's been quietly shaping us. Think for a moment about a relationship that hurts you. It doesn't have to be romantic. Maybe it's a friendship, a family relationship, or a connection at work. Now, ask yourself something gently. Have you felt this before? Not this exact feeling, the feeling underneath it, that sinking sensation, the tightening in your chest, or the moment when something inside you pulls back, reaches harder, or goes quiet. Maybe the names are different or the stories are different, but the ache feels strangely familiar, almost as if life keeps handing you different situations wrapped around the same feeling. Sometimes we find ourselves reaching for people who can only meet us halfway. Other times, closeness feels comfortable right up until the relationship asks us to be vulnerable. Maybe you've spent years trying to earn love, approval, or reassurance that never quite feels received. Or maybe asking for what you need feels so uncomfortable that you convince yourself you don't need much at all. These are different stories with different faces and circumstances. Yet underneath so many of these experiences is the same quiet question. Am I safe here? Do I matter here? Will I still be loved if I show up as who I truly am? Most of us don't stop to ask where those questions came from. They're just here, quietly shaping how we respond when someone matters to us. Let me take you back for a moment, not to a specific memory, just to a feeling. Think about what it felt like to need comfort, understanding, reassurance, or connection, and not quite receive it. Maybe the people around you were overwhelmed, or they were struggling in ways you couldn't see. Or maybe something important to them was missing. You didn't need to understand it. You felt it. And the feelings have a way of leaving impressions. Years later, someone pulls away. A text goes unanswered. A conversation feels different. And someone who once felt close suddenly feels far away. And before you know it, that familiar feeling has found its way back. And it's not because you're weak or you're too sensitive. It's because something familiar has been touched. Relationships have a way of uncovering places we don't always know are there, of longing to feel loved, a desire to feel important, and a wish to feel secure with someone. When those places get stirred, the reaction can feel much bigger than the moment itself. And it's not because you're overreacting. It's because something meaningful has been awakened. Or maybe you smile, you say, I'm fine, and carry the hurt by yourself because somewhere along the way that felt easier than letting anyone know how much it mattered. We all have ways of protecting our hearts when a relationship feels uncertain. It's easy to give a little more of yourself, hoping closeness will return or that things will somehow feel okay again. Maybe you recognized yourself in one of those, or maybe something entirely different came to mind. Just notice what comes up for you. There's nothing to fix, only something to understand a little more clearly. Most of these responses, they aren't conscious choices. They're habits of protection. And at some point in your life, they probably helped you get through something very difficult. They helped you stay connected and feel safe. They helped you survive. Here's what I hope you hear today. Nothing is wrong with you. The reactions you carried made sense in the context of what you lived through. You can know a relationship isn't healthy and still feel drawn toward it. You can be deeply loved and struggle to let it in. You can tell someone you're over it and still feel the ache when something reminds you of it. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. And underneath so much relationship pain is something incredibly simple, a desire to feel safe, to feel seen and valued, and to feel like you belong. The first step isn't fixing any of that. The first step is noticing. Get curious. Pay attention. Where have I felt this before? What happens in my body when this feeling shows up? What part of me is asking for care? Because it's hard to understand something we're constantly trying to push away. This journey isn't about fixing a relationship or fixing yourself. Sometimes pain arrives with something valuable tucked inside. When you stop pushing away what you're feeling and begin to understand your patterns with compassion instead of judgment, when that happens, something begins to soften. The grip loosens and the weight shifts, and healing quietly begins. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll keep exploring this together. Next week, we'll talk about why calm, healing connection can sometimes feel uncomfortable. In week 3, we'll explore why the body can hold on long after the mind is ready to move forward. And in week 4, we'll discover the part of you that's been longing to be loved for who you are. Stay with me. And if this touched something in you, share it with someone who may need it too. Because the questions we carry in silence are often the ones most worth exploring. Your body, it already knows how to heal. It's simply waiting for you to listen.